Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for another exciting presentation from Lindsay here at the Buffalo Startup Week. This year, we are doing the State of Venture in Upstate New York. For those that don't know, Lindsay has done this for 4 years running in Ohio, so very excited to bring this talk to Buffalo. And just a friendly reminder, if you don't mind just keeping yourself muted during this talk, if you have questions, please just pop them in the chat. We will have time at the end for Q&A. Lindsay loves Q&A, so please have your questions ready to go at the end. But then without further ado, I am thrilled to welcome Lindsay Stencil back to Buffalo Startup Week, someone who rarely needs an introduction, but for those of you who do not know Lindsay, she's a partner with Thompson Hine in their new ventures group, so she knows a little bit about ventures and startup. But prior to joining Thompson Hine, she wore a few hats, but one of those was Chief Investment Officer and Fund Manager of Launch New York, where she was twice named Investor of the Year and helped build one of the most active seed funds in upstate New York. So she's quite the champion of venture and startups in the upstate New York region. So Lindsay, welcome, and let's get started.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining today, and thank you for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come back to the place that built me, good old upstate New York. So without further ado, let us get started. So why are you here? To learn about the state of venture in upstate New York. And so here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to, Danielle did a brief introduction here, but we're also going to talk about what is venture capital. Venture capital is one of those things that I think gets sexified, if you will, in the media and things of that nature. But, is it really a fit for everyone? What is it? How does it work? And then what does it look like in the place that we call home? So then we'll talk all about venture in upstate New York as we've seen it unfold for the past year. We'll talk about some of the trends, but we'll also talk about areas where I do this across the country. So we'll talk about areas where we see some gaps and opportunities. So where there is a gap, there is an opportunity. And then naturally, we'll leave some time for Q&A. If you have a question that so inspires you, don't hesitate to drop it into the chat. And we will be sure to monitor that and answer those at the end of this talk. So street cred. Danielle covered a good deal of this, but just to reinforce the fact that I know what I'm talking about, I am from Buffalo born and raised. I did go to high school in the area. I went to Canisius College where I played Division I lacrosse and loved my time there, and finally spread my wings to go to law school, where I did that at the Ohio State University, where I was a double Buckeye getting a JD MBA. And now proudly serve as an adjunct professor there, teaching rainmaking to young lawyers. So teaching them how to make some money playing lawyer in law firms. And more importantly, I teach venture capital and deal making to my budding legal eagles. It's also a course I teach to lawyers generally across the country. I was one of the first female venture partners in the Midwest, not just the state of Ohio. So that was sort of an eye-opening thing for me that said, hey, there's an area that maybe we could use some improvement in venture capital generally. I accidentally started a law firm in 2010-ish and ended up representing 200 plus startups, venture clients, accelerators, etc. So my law firm got acquired by Thompson Hine in 2020, like 2 weeks before the world fell apart. Good timing. That was not lost on me, that timing there. But now I'm a partner in the new ventures group, but I also oversee all of fund formation for the firm generally. So venture funds, hedge funds, PE funds, all that sexy stuff that we might see in the news, but sort of feels amorphous to us sometimes. And most importantly, was the Chief Investment Officer for Launch. And that was one of my favorite roles to date, where I got to meet tons of great budding entrepreneurs and help them get some of their seed funding into their businesses and get them rocking and rolling. To include some of the folks that you've seen here speak this past week. So Irfan's one of them, was happy to help Irfan recap his company, and now look at them off to the races. So all good stuff. Okay, so venture. Where does venture sit in the schema of this? Well, we'll start from the bottom and we'll end up here, okay, up in venture capital. So we have lots of different places where we can get funding to run our businesses each and every day. And so we'll work from bottom up. One of the places, I just talked to a great entrepreneur earlier today. She was like, look, to start my business, I liquidated my personal savings because I believed in my business so much. And that's amazing. So personal savings, your own money, your own sweat equity, those are places you can get and save some dollars. F3, F cubed, what the hell is this? Friends, family, and fools. They're the people who love you enough or are, just kind of like you enough to throw you some dollars. And so these folks help you get some very pre-seed level capital in the door to get your concept sort of from a plasma type thing to a more defined structure, if you will. Naturally, we could use our credit cards, but it's not something that I necessarily advise, though I have seen plenty of founders put their entire payroll for their company on a credit card from time to time. Bank loans, but bank loans are a little challenging for startups to get because banks want to see history. They also want to see personal guarantees. So you better be ready to put your house and everything else on the line if you're going to sign up for one of those. But if you can get it, it is non-dilutive capital. So you just got to repay it and then it's done. Grant funding, there's lots of different places that we can get grant funding, which is non-dilutive capital, comes in and it is scot-free, clear money that you get to use to grow your business. People oftentimes say to me, well, Lindsay, like, where can I get this grant funding? Well, where do I find these grant dollars? Google, you find them on Google. So I would suggest checking out, your topics, the type of business that you're in, see if anybody is funding women-led businesses, diverse-led businesses, biomedical businesses, clean tech businesses, because there's grant dollars for all sorts of things that are out there. So get your creative cap on and go Googling. We could also have things like royalty agreements or inventory financing. So you're sort of using the things that you might have in front of you to leverage and pay out in the future. Crowdfunding, this is really a growth area. They've really reworked and revamped crowdfunding, where we can take on up to $5 million in our company in a 12-month period. And that's a lot of money. And so it's another great way too. With crowdfunding, you can generally solicit so long as you sell through a platform. So it's a great way to build some evangelists across the globe if you wanted to for your own business. So very cool. SBA, the savior of the American people in 2020 and parts of 2021 with their PPP loans and EIDL loans. But they also have SBA loans, inventory financing loans, equipment loans, all sorts of different vehicles that you can use. You just have to have your ducks in a row and request them. And then it brings us to the topic that we came to listen to about today, which is venture capital. So venture capital is where we pool together dollars from institutions, think like banks or insurance companies or fund of funds, just investment groups generally, high net worth individuals, all accredited investors into one pool. And from that pool, there is a decision-making group called a general partner who then invests that capital into 15, 20, and depending on type of fund, maybe 40 plus companies over the life cycle of that fund. And so they strive to inject that capital into the business so that the business can accelerate growth and exit at some point not too far out in the future. And so I say that because, venture capital is a much different beast than a lot of the places that we might be seeking capital day to day. And so venture capital, what is it? I usually like to say venture capital, what is it good for? It turns out a whole stinking lot, because it is not only interesting, intellectually very stimulating topic, but it is something that we support job creation, industry creation, innovation throughout the globe with, okay? And so when we think about this, VC, venture capital, is the source of most new job creation, particularly in the US economy. Lindsay explained. So if you want to think about businesses like M&T, for example, M&T, great establishment, very large institution, but at the end of the day, they're oftentimes looking for opportunities to utilize technology to reduce headcount for a variety of reasons. And so that, probably not adding a ton of new jobs year over year. Okay. And then you might think, okay, small businesses, lifeblood of the American economy. True. But the economy can, in any one town, area, et cetera, can only support so many pizza shops, flower shops, things of that nature. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's a net neutral number of jobs that can be created there, if you will. But when we think about venture capital, we think about a place where we can now create entire new industries that have never been in existence prior to them being created, fund them, grow these industries, and now create millions, if not, billions ultimately of jobs. And so if we think about this, social media was not even an industry 25 years ago. And now it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry with millions and millions of jobs and trillions of dollars being circulated on it and through it annually. But for the funding of venture capital to accelerate the growth of the business formerly known as Facebook. I don't know, it's being called like Meta or something now, whatever, doesn't matter. But, and all of those juggernauts that came before it, but for the venture capital backing, they would not have accelerated the growth in the way that they did. And so new industries were born, right? Very, very cool. We see that in lots of different industries: robotics, insurance tech, healthcare technology, et cetera, et cetera. So VC does come in all shapes and sizes. And we're going to talk in our talk here today, we're going to include angel investors in our venture capital scheme, but you'll see a chart here coming up where we lay out for you along a continuum where folks are investing, be it from a pre-seed stage all the way through late growth. And we'll talk about what those mean here in a second. And I should stress, the venture capital is not long-term capital. And so when I'm saying long-term capital, I'm not talking about it in the true GAAP accounting sense of 12 months or more. What I'm talking about is, look, VC comes in and they have an expectation that they're going to invest in your business. They're going to help accelerate the growth of your business. And once they've done that, they're looking to have your business acquired or IPO'd or whatever the case is going to be, so that they can get their proceeds back out, return it to their investors, and march forward with their lives. Most venture funds have a finite life cycle of about 10 to 12 years, which means during that time, they've got to find a company, invest in a company, grow a company, and exit a company, and get all that money back to their investors. So they are not in this for 20, 30, 40 years with you. They are in this for 5 to 7 years with you, and apply a lot of pressure if you can't get your money out in time, and actually have contractual mechanisms to force you to buy them out, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, what is venture capital anyway? It is growth acceleration capital, meaning it is not used to repay the debts that you might have and refinance a whole bunch of things. No, it is used to say, okay, if we invest capital at point A, it is going to create, for every dollar we invest, it's going to generate $10 new, $20 new, $50 new of accretive growth. So a lot of times we hear people talking about a hockey stick. And so people are looking for that hockey stick level growth or J-curve level growth, shooting this thing to the moon. Most venture businesses are looked at like this. Their venture firms are looking for high growth businesses that are looking to make $10 million a year or more in top line revenue, generally doubling year over year within a period of 5 to 7 years. Okay, so not all businesses fit into that category. Venture capital is not appropriate for all businesses. In fact, statistically, only 0.5% of businesses get venture capital dollars, which means all those other things that I was talking about before, those are the sources of capital lots of folks should be looking to. But if you're looking for high growth capital to accelerate your business to the moon and get out of that puppy in 5 to 7 years and take your cash and do it all over again, venture capital is for you, okay? So ranges of funding, I promised we're going to show you a continuum here in a hot second, but ranges of funding. So as businesses mature, they go from different stages. So they go through different stages of life, just as we do as human beings, from, baby to crawling to walking to running to effectively crawling and laying down again. But anyway, same thing happens here with our startup. So pre-seed funding I'm just going to walk through these definitionally so we understand where we are. Okay, so pre-seed funding, it is really when you have basically an idea. It's sort of a blob, if you will. It's very primordial. You're trying to figure out like, hey, do we have anything here? We might need some capital to test some hypotheses and figure out if we're going to get somewhere. Pre-seed capital, as you can imagine, insanely risky because there's not generally a business model that's nailed down. There are some thoughts about what might work. Unit economics not totally ironed out in that business. So the people who are investing there are going to take some flyers. Generally, the people who are giving you dollars in pre-seed funding, they are often state type of agencies who might have some dollars that they can deploy through various groups, or you're going to be looking to F cubed, friends, family, and fools who just want to give you some money because they love you a lot. Okay, so next, let's assume we get through the pre-seed primordial phase. We move into seed funding. Seed, S-E-E-D, and here we're seeding our business. We're going to put some capital in to grow this thing and see if it does in fact have some legs that it can grow. It does in fact have the ability to start to have some scalable growth and determinable, consistent unit economics. Okay, so average seed funding rounds, on the coasts are a very different beast. In the more center of the country, to which I would also include upstate New York, seed funding rounds can range from anywhere from $750,000 to, on a very large seed round, $6-ish, $7 million. You're usually going to fall somewhere in that $1 to $2 million range for a seed funding round. Okay, and that is going to allow you to get to a place where you have determined unit economics and you're really ready to scale and grow. Next, we get into the insanely risky Series A funding. So oftentimes in our pre-seed and our seed funding, we're testing a lot of hypotheses, we're proving out unit economics, and in turn, we think we have figured out what turns this into a scalable business model. So Series A funding is used to accelerate and prove scalability. And so typically on a Series A raise, we're looking at somewhere between a range of $3 to $15 million, depending on size. Now, we do have outliers from time to time where the raises are exponentially larger than that. Okay, so I say that because a lot of times people say, well, in the news, I saw company ABC got $30 million for its Series A, so why shouldn't I? Well, if they were on a coast or, they had backing of certain groups, et cetera, that's always a possibility. But I think depending on the region in which you are raising, you need to know your audience and you need to know what their expectations are and what's normal for them. Because if you go just randomly to some group and you don't have a ton of traction and you say, I'd like to raise $30 million, please, they're going to say, thank you for coming and showing us your things. Enjoy your time. So we just need to know where we are and be realistic about that. And truthfully, you don't want to raise more money than you necessarily need sometimes. Sure, you want to have a buffer. COVID has certainly shown us that, but we don't want to raise like so much money that we dilute ourselves as founders so substantially that we don't care anymore unless the exit is like $1 trillion. So anyway, you get it. Series B, if we make it through the valley of death of Series A, lots and lots of businesses die in Series A. One, because they can't get funding, or two, because their metrics don't prove out and the thing just fizzles out and dies. But if we make it to Series B funding, now we're growing, baby. We are growing and going. So we are just going to be off to the races for that. And so the average raises that we're going to see in Series B on the lower end are somewhere around that $15 million range. On the higher end, they could be $100 million and falling somewhere between that $25 to $50 million range, typically in between. So that's a lot of money to deploy at a pretty quick pace. And then we get into Series C funding. And as you can see, these raise sizes keep going up and up. And the risk, though, typically is going down somewhat because we've proven business model, but the return percentage that the investors are making is actually decreasing because risk is lower. So company can give less of its business away for the multi-million dollars that it's issuing. So in Series C, we're often looking at $50+ million investment ranges. That capital, Series C, Series D, if raised, are things that we're really using to shoot the business towards acquisition. And so those are ultimately the goal here. So why is all of this important? Because we need to understand, what are the terms here? What are we looking at? And we do follow a pattern. You don't wake up tomorrow and go, I'd like to raise some Series A money, please. Because if you haven't gone through pre-seed and seed, someone's going to go, what about those? And so, know where you are on the scheme. That's why it's important. Definitionally understanding where these things are, super important. And what else is important is what we're going to start to walk through the duration of the rest of this presentation, which is knowing who you're pitching to, knowing where they invest on this pre-seed to, growth type of metric scale, and making sure you're not wasting your time asking the wrong people for money or, wasting their time doing the same thing. So my goal here with this presentation is to sort of show you who are the people who are investing, where are they investing, and what are they investing in? Because if you are a CPG, consumer product good business, but you are pitching a healthcare only investor, they do not care about you and they're going to ignore you and you just wasted your time. So we want to cut those things off, because the 1 hour of entrepreneur's time is like the equivalent of like 10 hours of a normal human being's time. And so we need to focus on who we're talking to and make sure that we're targeting the right messages to the right folks. So, ma'am, here we go. Looks like tons of logos here on this page. And if I say this, even 3 years ago, we didn't have all of these logos in existence. And so it is really something to sit here and drink in how much this ecosystem has developed and continues to develop each and every day. So for the folks who are on this call who have been the builders and the grinders, kudos to you and thank you for all that you have done here to help continue to grow this ecosystem. But as you can see on this page, we have pre-seed, seed, Series A, and beyond. And so where these logos are falling are showing you where, if you are a pictorial type learner, as I am, where these folks are falling in terms of investment. We're going to walk through, at least all the ones who go back to me, we're going to walk through what it is that they do, and so that we can go ahead and understand where they're investing in, what they're thinking about. And so, as I mentioned, we do have some angels here on the page. Angels tend to invest much earlier. They're considered angels because, think about it, they're like giving you money from heaven to invest in and grow your business. But they're not doing it just as a pure gift. They do have an expectation of return, just like every other investor does. And so as we continue to walk through this scheme and talk about these groups, you'll see what they're doing, where they're investing, and hopefully help you target, if you're an entrepreneur, the message that's best suited to hopefully get you a meeting and in the door with these folks and hopefully get you some investment dollars. So without further ado, let's get into it. So 43 North, although not necessarily a true venture investor in the traditional sense, has really brought a lot of notoriety and fame, if you will, to the Buffalo region. It's still one of the largest business plan competitions in the entire world. And they bring in companies from all over the region and all over the world to pitch for a top prize of $1 million and some other prizes of $500,000, etc. But they also will follow on invest into their companies that they have awarded money to. And so they're thinking about a range of that post-seed into this into Series A type of range is where they're really looking for whether or not they're going to invest more follow-on capital. They are industry agnostic. If you've looked at the past winners, we've got, the infamous ACV, we've got other companies out of Canada that are much more involved in, milk production and other things of that nature, ag tech. And so we've got different businesses from all over the schema that they've really thought about. So when they say industry agnostic, that is in fact true. So recent success stories, they have recently created their 43 North Foundation from the wild success proceeds of ACV auctions and the IPO that happened earlier this year. ACV you're going to see a lot of times. on this sheet. Okay. And so we're going to get it out of the way right now. And it was a hell of a success story for this region, and led by a few really wonderful folks, many of whom are Buffalo based and Buffalo born and raised. They grew that company in a very short order in the grand scheme of things to IPO here this past year. And what a great success story that is. And I say that that's a success story, not just because it was an IPO and a successful one, but what needs to happen in any successful ecosystem. And we use the word ecosystem very deliberately, because all pieces and parts, from the cellular bacteria and algae and fungus to the upright running man, all need to be functioning within the ecosystem properly to make the system continue to work and grow. So if you think about those ponds that you might see, gosh, when you're driving down 90 off to the right and left as you're driving, and you're just like, wow, that thing looks dead. It's because that ecosystem isn't healthy. Something went wrong. And so in order to continue to have an ecosystem that works, successes like an IPO or big monetary exits like an ACV auction help to refuel the ecosystem and refeed it. Because what happens is, you know, the folks like the leaders of the organization, like the George Shimones, et cetera, now they have capital and they care about the region. So they want to reinvest it, be it in new companies, new individuals, et cetera, in addition to whatever else they want to do with their capital. But you get what I'm saying. They are going to refuel and refeed the environment. So the more of those that we can have, the better off this ecosystem will continue to be. And so, you know, we have this success of ACV auctions. We've also got Squire, who is recently valued at $750 million, knocking on that door of unicorn status being $1 billion valuation or more. Dragon status is $10 million in valuation or more. So a lot of people are trying to knock down the door of being a dragon now, not just a unicorn. All right, moving along. Armory Square Ventures. This takes us down 90 to Central New York, Syracuse area, also an office in New York City. You know, I would say these folks are really true seed and Series A investors, led by Somac and team out of Central New York. They're really looking for post-product and early revenue, not a minimum revenue requirement. This is important because some folks do have a minimum revenue requirement. And if you aren't hitting it, they don't want to look at you. So make sure you're understanding what the target is so that when you tee up your presentation, you hit it, right? Focus areas, as you can see here, but they're really thinking about things like fintech, e-commerce, supply chain, the things that we hear oftentimes, but these are the things that are going to help shape our universe for the next 10, 20, 30 years to come. They really do focus on B2B SaaS and marketplace technologies. And as you can see, recent success stories, ACV, and then their additional company, Bento Box, was recently acquired. So kudos to the team out in Central New York. Moving on to Big Red Ventures, keeps us in Central New York. This is out of Cornell. And so this is oftentimes overseen by seasoned folks, but assisted by students interested in the venture space out of Cornell University. They're investing in seed to Series A companies. They're not going to lead your investments. Okay, I stress this because like an Armory Square will lead. Big Red is going to follow on, but sometimes that follow-on capital is necessary to get you over the hump to get you closed and marching forward. They are industry agnostic. That is in fact true. They've got ag tech, fintech, you know, biotech, all sorts of things. And recent success stories, you can see here, Caper was acquired by Instacart for a nice, healthy $350 million win. And so Concerto was also acquired here. So good stuff. Keep it marching forward. Now we're going to come back down 90 to Buffalo, New York, where we have the Buffalo Angels led by Jack McGowan and team. You know, they are a true angel group investing in seed, sometimes even, you know, earlier, and they will follow on into your Series A and maybe future rounds. They do also offer co-investment opportunities. So if an individual is part of Buffalo Angels but wants to also go into the company a little bit more on their own, they offer opportunities for their investors to do that. Focus areas, again, agnostic, but they do focus on teams And Jack is a great person to talk to help you think about how to craft your pitch and discuss how to be most successful or successful as possible when pitching folks like Buffalo Angels, Rochester Angels, and moving, back down 90. So they have re-upped and raised their subsequent fund. And so they made 8 investments in 2021, keeping that train a-moving. And they did have an exit in Clearview Social this year too. So kudos to them. All right, we're running up and down 90 hard here today, but as you can see, we're kind of going in order, alphabetical order. So we're just doing a lot of running. But Center State CEO based out of Syracuse, and they are investing in early stage companies that are located in the Syracuse area. They do also have effectively office space and other similar things for startups to help them really move their ball forward. These days, they're really focused on climate tech and the companies that are impacted out of their sister business plan competition, Genius New York. I definitely recommend that if you are falling in the climate tech type of region, drone related technology, things of that nature, you might want to check out this organization to see if it's a good fit for you. And as you can see here, some success stories. Drone Seed raised some decent money here, and that's a nice size Series A, right? And Density raised $125 million Series D. So that's a ton of money to grow a business with. So kudos to them. Great. Chloe Capital. So one of the things that doesn't happen a whole lot in venture capital is that we see funds led by women or diverse individuals. And so it is nice to say here in Upstate, we do have a few women-led organizations, and Chloe Capital being one of these. 43 North's president is now a female, so kudos to them as well. But Chloe Capital really are investing in this earlier stage, again, this seed to Series A. They are focused on women-founded and women-led businesses. So if that's not you, I would just, make sure that you're thinking about that when you're talking to them. But they're really looking at SaaS companies and climate tech, ed tech, fintech, things of that nature. And they really do apply a gender and diversity lens. They take that very, very seriously at this organization. So recently, one of their companies has merged with another, which is excellent for them. I will also say that this organization is still pretty fresh and new. So lots of good things to continue to come. Pupil Ventures. So, okay, this one very, very early as we're seeing. So we've got pre-seed to Series A. That's that really high risk capital. And as you can see, the focus areas here, we're thinking about marketplaces, ag tech, mobility and automation, healthcare, prop tech, clean tech. So I say this, I flag this so that we make sure that if we're outside of those things, we maybe have just either a quick, gut check. Is this a good use of your time to apply? Is it a good use of, time of investor to take a look? Recent success stories, you can see them here, but this is a newer one to the game, so I'm sure more great things to come out of this organization. Impellant Fund, again, very early on in the investment schema, led by David Brown and team. Here, pre-seed to seed, they have limited follow-on into Series A, and so that's important because not everybody wants to follow on. They want to maybe place a bunch of bets earlier on in the investment cycle and see where and how those things grow. They are tech focused, as you can see. So make sure you're keeping that in the back of your mind as you're deciding whether or not that these folks are a fit for you. And so they are seeing growth nationally across their portfolio and continuing to, I can say this, they can't, but continuing to raise some capital for their fund and looking to close that out at a pretty healthy fund size. So kudos to them. One of my favorites, I've got a soft spot for Launch New York, led by Marnie Levine and team. So yes, another female-led organization. Awesome. They really are investing in pre-seed to seed stage investments. They have 2 different types of funds. They have a nonprofit and for-profit fund in an effort to try to drive more investment into the ecosystem in those earlier stages, and with a focus of keeping businesses in the upstate New York region. So they really are investing only in the upstate New York region, the 27 westernmost counties of the state of New York. I say that because if you are not that, they cannot invest in you. So make sure geographically you're hitting the mark there. Focus areas, they are industry agnostic, but they do have some very specific programs for different types of businesses, be it clean tech with their eco incubator. They have some investment dollars working in concert with the JP Morgan Chase Group to invest in DEI impacted businesses. So, those are things just to kind of keep in mind. They also have an investor network that couples on to their vehicles. So if investors want to dig in a little bit more on certain companies and co-invest, they have the opportunity to do that too. Recent success stories, naturally, you can see here, we just heard from our boy Irfan not too long ago. And they're doing some great things and growing by leaps and bounds. And then also Agape, led by Kadisha. Sometimes COVID did businesses disservice, and sometimes it did them a solid. And she was very well helped by COVID, and her app really took off, helping kind of couples find ways to connect in better ways. And what better time to do it when you're stuck in the house with those people and trying to figure out ways to love each other and not murder each other. So great. So Luminate, we're heading back down 90 into the Rochester area. This is a very interesting organization, but they're investing in areas that are just past prototype, typically with revenues, and they've raised some seed dollars. So make sure if you're thinking about you're fitting into that range. They can be located anywhere, but do need to have some meaningful operations in the Finger Lakes. So you need to take that into account if you're thinking like, hey, is this organization for me? How it works, you can see it here, but 10 teams, $100,000, a piece in 6 month time in the accelerator. Focus areas, optics, photonics, imaging. So if you're those types of businesses, you've got some operations in the Finger Lakes region, throw your hat in the ring if you're fitting the qualifications here, right? Recent success stories, they just wrapped up cohort 4, which means they put a lot of capital to work in the Finger Lakes region. And they've got some Series A to be announced with some previous winners. So more to come there. All right, marching on, OneLink Ventures, pre-seed to seed, again, very early on. You guys are like, when are we getting to anyone who does growth? We'll get there. You can see we're on O. We're almost done with the alphabet, so bear with me. Focus areas, all, but they do like B2B SaaS, marketplace, mobile, etc. So, this is one of those you might want to think about throwing your hat in the ring if it's a good fit for you and you're in pre-seed to seed. So they have also recently helped to successfully build some tech stacks in some various companies, etc. So more to come there. This is a very new one to the scene. Our friends in New York Ventures. New York Ventures is the venture funding arm of ESD, so Empire State Development. Where are they investing? Seed to A. They are not a lead investor. So that means do not call Jennifer Teagan and friends and say, will you lead my investment round? I need someone to do that, because the answer is no. That's not how they're established and set up. But they are a strong follow-on check. As you can see, the areas that they focus on here, they have been wild supporters of keeping businesses in the state of New York and giving them great amounts of funding dollars. And on top of that, great connectivity throughout the state and beyond. Again, you can see success stories here, but kudos to them. And this is definitely someone that, as you are continuing to raise, that you should keep in your mind if you are located in the state of New York. Rochester Angels, so led by Jim Sinal and team. Again, typical angel investing, but seed into Series A. Have to have an upstate New York location. They are industry agnostic, but they're looking for, product market fit, demonstrated appropriately. They want to see that you've got some sort of customer validation. So what does that mean for folks listening? Do you have signed LOIs or signed customer contracts that you need to execute against, but you need funding to do it? That's a great way to prove something like that to Rochester Angels, other investors, etc. Recent success stories, you can see them here. We're seeing this Clearview Social pop up a couple more times too. So you can see the syndication of this ecosystem and how this is working together, and everybody is sort of leaning in on companies together to help them grow. Start Fast Ventures, we're back into central New York here, led by Nasser Ali and Martin Babinek, but here we go. They also are doing seed and Series A, focusing outside of the major metropolitan hubs, but a big focus on upstate, okay? So they are in upstate, they've invested in upstate, they've had a number of wins in upstate. These are folks who know what they're doing, very, very sophisticated, great connectivity, and they offer some pretty great programs too, educational and otherwise. So focus areas, you can see them here, but if you're B2B SaaS, this is probably someone you want to take a hard look at. They do have a preference for teams with some level of experience here. So if you're a seasoned entrepreneur in B2B SaaS, this might be someone you want to talk to, right? And recent success stories, FinCar. So great, Topmark. We have finally moved into the growth phase. So, Topmark, they are looking at growth stage businesses ranging from 3 to 30 million in revenue. They want to see that the product works. There's customers willing to pay for it. They have sales processes and metrics in place. They are looking in up and coming markets, but they do lean in very heavily in upstate New York, Florida, and the other places listed out here. But this is led by Brian Modell and team, and these folks are super seasoned investors who've been doing this for a very long time, who are very well connected. So if you are looking for that next stage of capital, this is a great place for us to be talking to. So they are B2B SaaS and tech-enabled services. So make sure that we're fitting in there, and they do look to partner with their entrepreneurs. Like, these are folks who really do like to say, we are more than just money. How can we add additional value here? And I should say this because I'd be remiss if I didn't. If you're looking for investors, anyone can give you money, but can they offer up opportunities to open doors for next customer or first customer, other investors, future investors, exit opportunities, open up new sales channels? These are the things that are really the value add. And in addition to it, folks who've done this before and can understand how hard it is to lead a business. When you are an entrepreneur, everything is on fire almost all of the time, and you are under tremendous stress, tremendous pressure, and you need someone who knows when they can push you and when they need to let off the gas a little bit and let you recover. And that is not something that everybody can do, but seasoned folks like Topmark and others are really great at knowing and doing this. So recent successes, you can see it, but SpinCar, iCardiac, several times over, successful entrepreneur. He just keeps repeating and killing it. So Up Ventures Capital, again here, a Martin Bebenek related organization, but investing in late seed to Series A. You usually are coming through a referral. So this is important to know how to get in the door, right? And so if you got a warm lead walking into these folks, you're going to be much better off. B2B SaaS and enterprise software is really, really thinking. They too were invested in ACV and SpinCar. So we're coming to the end of the road here, but W Fund. So this is another one near and dear to my heart. W Fund, led by Kate Brodock and Allison Capon, and they are investing in women-led and women-founded businesses, and they do have a carve-out for diverse founders. So they are acutely focused, henceforth the name W Fund, on women-led businesses. Their pre-seed to seed will occasionally follow on into a Series A. They're really looking at tech-enabled businesses, not life sciences, things of that nature, but if you're tech-enabled and you fit into some of these buckets and you're women-led, women-founded, or diverse-led, this is a place that you should be looking for sure. Recent success stories, they've got several of their companies raising large follow-on rounds. Unfortunately, because those are in process, I'm not allowed to talk about them, but I can tell you that they're happening. So more to come there, and looking forward to seeing that. So one more W, led by Tom Quinn and team, the Western New York Impact Fund. And so here, late seed to growth stage. So here's another growth investor, good stuff. They have to be in Western New York as they define it. So make sure you understand that. And investments need to create both social and, sustainable social economic type of returns. And so these need to be socially responsible organizations. So that is a key tenet of this, but they do have some decent capital and have invested, heavily in some businesses. And so if you are looking for those slightly larger checks and you're able to check some of these boxes and to discern how you can provide financial or social economic benefit to the region at large, then I think this is something you should certainly contact Tom, Quinn, and team about. But recent successes, Clean Fiber, that was all over the news with their most recent raise. And once again, our boy Irfan, so with Circuit Clinical. So all good stuff there. So let's get to a summary here and leave a few minutes for questions. But summary, I will say there's more dollars and organizations providing funding than we've ever seen before in the upstate region. And these aren't just organizations that do some funding here. These are organizations oftentimes that are based here. And so that is a true testimony to the growth and development of the ecosystem. Now, most of the new dollars are in the seed to late seed stages, which means we still have problems in Series A. And as you can see, I only listed off so many growth investors. And so we've got to continue to find investors at that later stage of the funnel. And so, yes, there's still a gap in the angel, sorry about that, pre-seed funding for many startups raising in the ecosystem, but we'll get there. Additional gap, like I said, in the Series A, that's not particular to this region. I would say a Series A funding gap occurs almost everywhere because it's incredibly high risk capital. It's much larger checks proving out, does this business model and do the unit economics work? And so look, where can we improve? Every time we see a gap, that is an opportunity, right? And so you did hear me say, I didn't say a lot of times many investors are willing to lead. So a lot of times we need investors who are willing to say, yes, I will take the lead on setting the terms of this investment, on doing the bulk of the due diligence on this investment, etc. And that is a little risky for them, right? They got to stick their neck out on the line and say, I believe in this enough and want you other investors to syndicate with me and come into this business together with me. And we need more diverse funders. I only listed off so many females, and not too many of them are diverse ethnically. And so that is an area where we can seek improvement. Oftentimes, this is no secret, right? We all have, whether we know it or not, some unintentional biases. And so the more diversity that we can bring around the table, the more likely we are to continue to have investments that look like the world that is all around us every day. So what questions do you have? And I would be remiss if I didn't put this up there and leave this here if you would like to find me or contact me to learn anything else about this. So without further ado, I'll pause and I'll say, what questions do you have?
Lindsay, thank you for a great presentation. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or take yourself off of mute and turn your camera on and ask. We have Lindsay for a couple more minutes.
Yes.
And let me tell you, usually this is valuable time with Lindsay, so fire away. I will ask one, Lindsay. What trends do you see in upstate New York, either in terms of funders or startups, that you see going into 2022?
Yeah, so great ask. And so I continue to see a growth in what I would call ag tech, broadly defined, so agricultural technology, which makes sense. We oftentimes build what we know or build what we see as wrong in a system. And so we have seen a growth in the ag tech portion of the ecosystem. Clean tech, we definitely have seen an uptick in development there, and I would credit a lot of that to the funding from NYSERDA and other organizations who are acutely focused on climate tech and climate tech related or impacting businesses. And so those are incredibly intensive capitally businesses. But when you de-risk that capital or de-risk the business with capital from places like a NYSERDA and otherwise, it actually attracts much more capital into those and allows for further funding. So I will say the state of New York does it better than anyone in terms of their programs through NYSERDA and promoting clean tech technology, so climate tech and clean tech. So kudos to them, but I definitely see that as a continued trend because there is the availability to actually do it here and do it successfully.
That's great. And the ag tech was not a plant, but next week is the finals for Grow New York.
It
so
is.
If you want to check out the hottest ag tech companies in upstate New York and that are coming from around the globe, that is the end of next week as well.
Yes. And so be sure to check that out if that's something that you're interested in, even if it's not a space that you're saying like, hey, I'd like to invest in this right now. But you want to watch it grow a little bit, no pun intended. It is a great place to start to watch them, proceed down their growth path.
We won't use the word grow anymore.
No more growth.
Any questions from anyone else before we wrap up here? Don't be shy. Okay.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you tuning in today, and we hope to see you again next year.
Thank you. Thank you.